She was an expert trainer, a rising star in the world of marine performance. With over a decade of experience and a deep bond with the animals she worked with, Jessica Radcliffe was living her dream. But on one tragic afternoon, in front of a live audience, everything went wrong. The water churned, the trainer vanished, and what followed would change the marine park industry forever. This is the horrifying last moment of Orca trainer Jessica Radcliffe and the secret history no one talks about. Welcome to the Animal Quest channel. If you're fascinated by true animal encounters and the stories that unfold behind closed gates, be sure to like, share, and subscribe. Now, let's begin. Long before she stepped into a tank with a 6-ton killer whale, Jessica Radcliffe was just a little girl with a dream. Growing up in a small Midwestern town, she was fascinated by the ocean, though she had never seen it. While other kids played house, Jessica memorized marine mammal facts. She knew every species of dolphin by heart, every orca name at Sealand by the age of 12. On her 13th birthday, her parents took her to Sealand, a sprawling marine park on the Florida coast. That day, she saw her first orca up close, and something inside her clicked. She didn't just want to visit, she wanted to belong. In her 20s, she joined the park as an entry-level assistant. She was cleaning buckets and studying behavior patterns long before she ever touched a whistle. But her passion was undeniable. Within a few short years, she climbed the ranks to senior trainer. She specialized in behavioral enrichment, building close relationships with dolphins, belugas, and eventually orcas. Jessica wasn't just a trainer. She was family to these animals. She understood their cues, their moods, their pain. She believed the bond between human and whale could be built on mutual trust. But trust with a predator of that size can be unpredictable. Before he was known as Titan, he was a calf, no more than 2 years old, swimming in the cold, dark waters off the coast of Iceland. He stayed close to his pod, learning the clicks and songs of his family, until one day they were silenced by nets. Titan was taken, torn from his mother and hauled into captivity in 1983. He would never see the wild again. From the beginning, Titan struggled. The tanks were too small, the noise disorienting, and the other orcas, they weren't family. At his first facility, aggression was already being recorded, not toward the trainers at first, but toward other orcas. He was often isolated, often punished. In 1991, during a routine session, a female trainer slipped and fell into Titan's pool. Witnesses say he pulled her under. By the time help arrived, it was too late. The death was ruled an accident. The official report stated it couldn't be determined if the whale intended harm. Titan was transferred again. At Sealand, Titan was introduced as the park's star performer. Larger than any whale they had before, powerful, majestic. But behind the curtain, trainers were uneasy. He ignored commands, he refused to eat. Trainers reported incidents of aggression, and fear began to spread behind the scenes. But Jessica believed in redemption. She believed that with patience and care, even Titan could be trusted. What no one knew then was that Titan had already tasted danger, but no one believed lightning would strike again. It was a typical February afternoon. The seats were full. Families, tourists, children, all gathered to watch the park's signature orca show. The energy was high. No one could have imagined what was about to unfold. Jessica Radcliffe was set to perform the finale segment. She had done it dozens of times. The routine was smooth, rehearsed, familiar. Titan emerged from the water on cue. The audience cheered. Jessica gave the signal. He leapt, he spun, he splashed. A perfect start. They were in sync until they weren't. Everything was going as planned. Then she got too close. Titan's massive jaws closed around her ponytail. In one violent motion, he yanked her into the water. For a moment, the crowd didn't understand. Was this part of the act? But Jessica wasn't surfacing, and Titan wasn't letting go. What followed was a terrifying display of power. Titan thrashed, dragging Jessica violently through the water, again and again. Trainers on deck sounded emergency alarms. They threw nets, gave signals, used food, hand gestures, anything they could. But it was no use. He wouldn't let go, no matter what they did. He wouldn't let her go. The attack continued for over 30 minutes, and by the time they recovered her body, it was far too late. The show came to a sudden halt. Music cut off. Sirens echoed through the stadium. Staff screamed into radios, "Code Black! Code Black!" Emergency response was underway, but for Jessica, every second was slipping away. Trainers scrambled, shouting commands they'd practiced for years, hand signals, audio cues, food incentives. Nothing worked. Titan refused to respond. Witnesses described the scene as surreal. One moment she surfaced, gasping, reaching, the next dragged down by thousands of pounds of force. Some spectators covered their children's eyes. Others kept filming, too shocked to look away. Screams turned to stunned silence. "He's not letting her go. Oh my God, is that real?" Jessica was pulled under again, and again. At one point, Titan surged from the water, her lifeless body seen trailing beside him, limp and motionless. It took more than 30 minutes for the team to isolate Titan. Only then could they retrieve Jessica's body. The injuries were catastrophic. Reports noted blunt force trauma, severe lacerations, and complete loss of life at the scene. By the time the crowd exited the stadium, there were no more screams, no applause, just silence. They had just watched a nightmare unfold in real life. The park was shut down within the hour. Gates locked, shows canceled. Local authorities launched a formal investigation, while federal agencies stepped in to assess what went wrong. Jessica Radcliffe, just 38 years old, was pronounced dead at the scene. Her autopsy would later confirm what many feared. She had died from a combination of drowning and massive blunt force trauma. The scale of her injuries was consistent with being dragged, struck, and submerged repeatedly. The story exploded across news networks around the world. Headlines ran on a loop. Trainer killed by killer whale. Orca turns violent during live show. Talk shows, cable news, and online outlets debated every detail. But this wasn't the first time Titan had been involved in a death, and soon the public began asking questions the park wasn't ready to answer. Animal rights groups reignited their long-standing campaigns against orca captivity. Protests erupted outside Sealand gates. Hashtags demanding justice for Jessica and freedom for Titan trended globally. Sealand issued a carefully worded statement calling the event a tragic accident and expressing condolences to Jessica's family. But behind the scenes, damage control was underway. Staff were instructed not to speak to the media. Internal memos were leaked, revealing the park had documented behavioral issues with Titan for years and continued to use him in shows despite multiple red flags. The conversation had changed. It wasn't just about a tragic incident. It was about an industry built on spectacle and the price of entertainment when working with wild, intelligent predators. For many, this wasn't just a tragedy. It was a turning point. In the weeks that followed, Titan was permanently removed from all public performances. No more shows, no more crowds. He was confined to a backstage tank, out of view, out of spotlight, but never out of public conversation. Jessica's family, once quiet in the shadow of grief, came forward. With poise and purpose, they demanded answers, not just for themselves, but for every trainer who had ever stepped into the water without knowing the full risk. They challenged Sealand directly, pressing for transparency and accountability, and they weren't alone. Across the country, safety audits were launched in marine parks. New regulations were introduced, barring trainers from entering tanks with orcas during live performances. OSHA, the federal agency responsible for workplace safety, handed down fines and mandates that would forever change how these parks operated. But the legacy didn't stop at policy. It sparked a cultural reckoning. In the years that followed, a wave of documentaries and exposés began to surface. The most famous being Blackfish, which drew heavily from Titan's history and the events that led to Jessica's death. The public began to question not just how these animals were treated, but why they were kept at all. Petitions flooded in. Protests grew louder. Attendance at marine parks declined. The illusion of harmless entertainment had been shattered. And it was Jessica Radcliffe's story that shattered it. Her name became more than a headline. It became a symbol, a warning, a reminder that even the most experienced, the most dedicated, the most beloved could still fall victim to the unpredictable force of nature. Jessica Radcliffe became the face of a global reckoning. Was this preventable? Could the tragedy of Jessica Radcliffe's death have been avoided? Or was Titan, a wild animal captured from the sea, destined to lash out? Was he a victim too, bound by the same captivity that robbed him of his natural instincts? When we look at the story of Jessica and Titan, we're forced to ask ourselves, when wild animals are put on display for our entertainment, who's really in control? Is it the trainers who dedicate their lives to understanding these creatures? Or is it the animals whose true nature can never be fully tamed? These are the questions that linger. The tragedy of one woman, one whale, and the lives forever changed. It's a story that shook the world and opened our eyes to a reality that we can't ignore any longer. What do you think? Could this have been prevented? Do you believe animals like Titan should be kept in captivity for our entertainment? Comment your thoughts below. And if you want to hear more real-life animal stories that shook the world, subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned for more stories that reveal the truth behind the headlines. Thanks for watching.